so that was lucky. Um, so before we start, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'm zooming in from Wurundjeri country and would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations people here on the call tonight. So, my name is Nellie, and I'm the National Youth Policy and Project Officer at AYAC, also known as Australian Youth Affairs Coalition. Um, Before I hand over to Katie, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. So, we will be recording today's session. If you'd prefer not to have your face shown on the screen, you can just turn your camera off. I will also be monitoring the chat if you want to ask any questions or make comments. We also have captions enabled, so you can click down below on the toolbar in Zoom. It should say show captions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Katie Acheson. Katie is a long-time youth advocate, strategist, and connector with more than 2 decades of experience driving change alongside young people. Katie has worked at the intersection of policy, lived experience, and community action, leading initiatives that amplify youth voices in decisions that shape their lives. As a youth worker and advocate, Katie Acheson's Churchill Fellowship took her across France, Portugal, England, Ireland, and Canada to learn how young people are meaningfully included in decision making across government, policy, mental health, research, and youth work. Katie didn't come home with a perfect model of youth inclusion to roll out in Australia, but what she found was even more valuable. Different recipes for success, systems, structures, supports, and mindsets that ensure young people's voices aren't just heard, but shape decisions at every level. We already have all the right ingredients here for this in Australia, but what we need is clarity on what we're trying to achieve, the right supports, and the right starting points. So I'm going to hand over to Katie now to start tonight's session.
I also just want to acknowledge these two wonderful faces who I'm going to introduce later on. But I just want to acknowledge that it is what time on the other side of the world is it now? Is it 7 a.m. in the morning? Yeah.
7:05 a.m. Thank you, daylight savings.
So Antonia and Megan are in the UK right now and will be joining us a little bit later. But before I begin, I wanted to just maybe walk some of you through a little bit of why we're here today and how this all kind of came about. So I'm going to share my screen because we love a slide and less of my face. Can you see? Oh, I've started from the wrong place. Let me just have a
Could have
moment.
been worse. It could have been your bank statements or your emails, Katie.
Do you know what? I have done that before. It's not even the first time. Let's be real. I'm not that person who gets it right. I'm totally not that person.
Youth participation is messy. It's meant to be.
That's right. Yes, exactly. I like to
I
start.
think you've just
Can
done
you
it
see
again.
my face on a screen? Okay.
Yes, but I think you've just shared the run through again. Do you want me to
Yeah.
share your slides? I can probably do it.
Hmm. That's not. Okay. Can
Let me
we?
try.
Yeah, let me try again.
I've got it if not.
Thank you, everybody, for understanding. Now can you see it?
Yes. Perfect.
Hey. Right. Okay. So let's get my lovely face. So as Nellie kindly said, it was a very large and wonderful introduction. I've been around for a long time, since I was a young person, and I started working with young people in a homelessness service when I was about 18, but after that, actually. Um, and from that point, I've always been pretty obsessed with how services don't really do a great job listening to young people. And then I started caring about systems, got involved, work with AAC, work with a number of different organizations. And over the time, we've had some really great moments. So I've got some photos of some of the moments I'm really sort of proud of as young people's voices really championing change of the systems that really kind of sometimes really forget about them. So we've got moments where we were trying to get allow 16 to 18-year-olds the ability to vote because young people were saying that they wanted more participation in the system, which actually would be interesting to hear about how it's going because England's just done that, haven't they? So that was a really incredible opportunity. Young people did a great job. That's Senator Jordan Steele at the top. It didn't go through. So great listening, great moment, didn't work. The second picture is one of the many television moments that we had when we were sort of amplifying young people's voices. That was about the budget. Really incredible work by young people advocating for some real change in housing inequality, economic equity in Australia. Really great work. Budget didn't change. And then the bottom one is just the recent social media bans. That was a panel where young people were really left out of that room, and there is a young person pictured in that. That was the only young person at that Senate inquiry panel giving advice, and then the laws were changed that really just significantly impacted on young people. So moments like that for me, it's like, wow, young people are clear, they have clear decision making processes and opinions, and they should be in the room, and yet they weren't listened to. And I felt like no matter where I got to, no matter how much power the sector had, we just couldn't sort of, nothing kind of stuck for long enough. And I wanted to understand what I could do differently to really change my practice, to see if it was me, because I feel like I'd failed. And I thought when I went overseas and then I was given that Churchill, which was just such a shock to me to be able to be looking at power structures. It's not something I ever thought would get funded. As I went overseas, I really thought that maybe one of the examples would be the perfect example I could bring back to Australia and that everybody would just get it. It would be like, this is the thing that we've all been missing. And then now it would be easy and right. But what I actually found is that wasn't the case. And as Nellie said, there was no perfect recipe. There was no perfect cake of youth participation or inclusion in decision making that I found. I just found lots of different recipes. So I started thinking of myself as a chef. So I work with young people, an ally or an advocate or whatever you want to call me. But thinking about the recipes, I started to really shift the way I felt like a failure and started to think of myself more as somebody who was taking different ingredients for every different decision or opportunity that I had. And something that I really pride myself on, or that really drives me, my personal value, is really cracking the doors. Like if there's a door open for a decision making, how can we get young people in there? That's something that I want to do. Or if there's a mic that's been had about what's issues that are affecting young people, how do we pass that mic to young people? But what I realized is that there were some pretty broad things that were stepping in the way. And what the Churchill showed me is that where you start really matters. So these were some of the things that I found, and we talked a little bit about that in the first session that we had with Simone Spray from 42nd Street in Manchester, when we looked at evidence, one of the starting points, and they really at 42nd Street they really look at young people as experts, and they start from that sort of space. But where I found different recipes in different places, where they started really matters. So in other examples like the Council of Europe, they're democracy based for their inclusion. They start from democracy, they end with democracy. It's very much about that model only works in a democratic space. It's there for that. And as many of you may have had, what I realized over the years is that when I'm cooking, when it comes to youth participation, I'm often throwing everything in the mix, and sometimes the outcomes can be flat. And that's because I'm trying to do too many things. So there were some pretty consistent things, though, across all of them that I found really were ingredients for success. So where you started mattered, but also there were these are pretty common things that I think many of you probably have thought about before, like resourcing. It's amazing how much it makes a difference when you properly resource a project, or young people being involved in a process, or just young people in general. Resourcing makes a massive difference, whether humans, whether just time, whether actual cash, it all makes a really big difference. But power sharing is my most favorite thing to talk about. And so when I was thinking about this second session, I was thinking about how do we talk about power sharing And something that young people have always talked about, and before we began this, we're saying about this quote that I found from a young person when I was doing the Churchill. Um, and sadly, this quote isn't unusual. And for 20 years, I've probably heard some version of this, that advisory bodies just exist so politicians can say that they consulted young people, but the decisions have already been made. So that tokenism ideal, and there are different words and different generations use different adjectives to kind of go with that. But the sad thing is, over the 20 years that I've been working, it hasn't changed enough that this is not, this still exists. Um, so I'm pretty passionate about that. So when I was writing, it was, it was one of the things that we looked at that was working. But when I was on LinkedIn, as some of us are sometimes, you may recognize this face. There was this incredible article that just jumped out at me, and I had conversations with many of my youth worky and youth interested friends, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, did you see this article?" And I was like, "Yes." So I reached out to the author of it and said, "Hey, I really need to talk to you. This is really interesting." But I think the reason why it resonated is because it's true. And it's like, why are we still having these conversations? And why is it doing that? So, who better to talk about what power looks like if it's created with young people? What it looks like is an author who can really kind of get under the skin of what we're all thinking. So, just to set the context before I start the conversation with these two incredible humans, I wanted to just ask everybody who's online at the moment just to, in the chat, look at this bingo card, because I think this is a really interesting thing that, as participation people put out, I was like, I saw this post and went, oh my gosh, how many of these do I have? So, in the last 3 months, I'd love you to think about how many of these have you done in the last 3 months? How many of them are true for you in the last 3 months? And if anybody has done all 9 of them, you get bingo. So you can turn your camera on and yell bingo like you're in the club if you would like. But if not, if you could just go in the chat, because I'd love to see how many people um, have have got this. And actually, now I need to think about it for myself.
And also, Megan, as our young consultant, can also give you some sneak answers to some of these questions if you like. If you need to unlock another box, Megan, I'm sure will uh, work her usual magic.
So did anybody get a bingo?
I think they're still reading.
Let me do that. So have you asked a young person to explain a TikTok trend and then actually watched it? Have you shared a meme with a young person and had a connection unlocked? Have
I'm
you
reading, I'm
explored this? This
reading
is
the
the good
chat.
one.
Go on then.
Do our own children count? Yep, if you want to. I think that's what happens with a lot of adults. They're like, yeah, I've done this recently. Having a conversation with your own child is actually it's a good thing. So yeah, we'll do that. I
Tom's
love this
got
one
bingo.
though. Have you accepted brutal honesty without flinching? Oof, no. Um, Say I don't know and mean it when it comes to that. Have you closed a loop in feedback in real life? Ooh, that's a big one. Have you let a young person run the show for 5 minutes at least? Have you taken a walk in their shoes? Like really thought about how it's impacting on them? Have you celebrated one tiny win together? And have you questioned one assumption you have about young people and actually listened? Probably 5 or 6. Have we got any nines?
Tom has
Megan, do
bingo.
you have nine? I feel like the
Tom
two of
has
you probably have
bingo,
nine.
but Tom is a young person. Do we count
Tom,
that?
yeah, I know, right? What is a young person in Australia? Also a great conversation to help us UK folk understand what a young person is over in Australia.
Let me stop sharing so we can see your faces better. Um, that's
Have you seen Rachel's chat? Sorry. Rachel's just written, I misread that running the show as running the shower. I
running the
just,
shower is good,
I
but
love that. Absolutely. Just brilliant.
So I'm not surprised. I have to admit I didn't get a bingo. I probably had, well, I've been taking a break, so that's better. But I think even in just my everyday walk, when I was walking day to day with young people, I think I probably had about 6 or 7 at my best on my best day. But there are definitely 2 or 3 that we didn't get. So, like, I want to actually just now then introduce officially. Maybe we can just start because I think this is true to who you are at Participation People, and I want to hear more about it. So, maybe if the two of you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and just talk about maybe just your role and how you got involved or where Participation People came from.
Megan, shall I go first and then you go second, or do you want to go first and I go second?
You
Me
can go
first.
first. Yeah.
If I do big picture and then you can hone in on the spotlight, the detail. Well,
Mm.
first and foremost, massive thank you to Katie and Ayak. Did I pronounce that right? Yes, great. I'm getting my hard vowels sorted. Thank you so much for welcoming us to your spotlight session. Participation people, we are playful in our practice, aka bonkers. We're absolutely mad because for us, youth voice, participation, engagement, co-production is messy. It's fun. It should be engaging. You shouldn't know what the destination is when you start out. Um, and everything that we do is about that playful practice. There are no slide decks at Participation People, even if you ask me one, even if you plea for a slide deck, because Megan will tell you why. Young people don't like them. They can't engage with them. They have a patience span of 1.7 seconds, not an attention span, a patience span. Um, and for us, all of the stuff that we do is centered from what I learn from young people just like Megan. And I have about 280 young people who advise me, who coach me, who co-host panels just like this one, who co-facilitate training, who help pitch for new work with us over in the UK, and we do some work in the States as well. And all of it is based on what works for Megan first, and adults very much a second, if not third. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the magic behind Participation People, our secret sauce to Chef Katie's recipe book. Come on in, Megan. Do you want to share who you are? Maybe favorite youth engagement project, or the one that was the big wow or the big pow? I don't know if
Mm.
I said that right, but you get me.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm 18. I'm a young consultant for lovely Antonia's company, Participation People. And I'm a church intern in my like boring everyday life. But to go more into like the youth advocacy world, I think my favorite project would have been working with a digital therapies company. So they wanted to design basically like a web platform thing, very techy, very interesting, but it was for young people. So they got loads of us in, about like 15 of us to start. We did a few Zoom calls to look at interfaces and all of this like color schemes, everything, literally from font types to what like something more complicated. I don't know, it's 7 a.m., but something more deep. And then so we designed it and then we launched it at the very amazing um like medical therapists keynote convention event. And then we did a voiceover for a video and we received feedback on how it was doing. So it was very much a full circle, like start, finish, and then they gave us feedback like 2 months later, which they really did not need to do, but it kept us in the loop and it kept us being like, yeah, we did that. We made that happen. And it was very nice and it was very encouraging to feel that. And I was like, wow, I like this. I want some more of this. Um, but then whole other side of the spectrum, I have done a few keynotes where I've been invited to speak to bring change to like I did one where it was football in my area, to just like improve it, what's going on, how is it going. So I did like a really good talk. Like, it was just pretty amazing, even if I do say so myself. Um, and then I gave the talk. Everyone was like, wow, that was so good. You should be so proud of yourself. And then I had lunch and then I went home and that was it. Like, okay, cool. And I don't think anything I actually said happened or was taken into consideration. I just think I had some pictures and then bye. So, yeah, two very contrasting projects that I've worked on.
I think
Cool.
that brings us to like Antonia, why, I mean the youth panels, like youth advisory panels or year long, I should say, youth advisory panels suck. Like what, because that experience of it being Megan's experience of it being not really genuine and just kind of a photo op is probably something many of us have heard before. Why did you write that particular article? Like, what was it about it? Do you find it's common in England as well? Because we find it all the time that young people say similar things here. Is it true there?
Do you want the honest truth? I know we're being
Yes.
recorded and transcribed and all of those things.
We'll
So,
bleep out any swearing. Go ahead.
um, there was there were we were so Participation People we're a consultancy, we're an agency. So everything we do is commissioned, everything we do is bespoke. And we had a client meeting or a potential client meeting, and and this was when the penny really dropped.
Mm.
They were asking me to co-create with young people a 50 question survey of which they wanted 10,500 responses that was statistically relevant in the UK. And I'm sure a lot of us in the room can empathize with a, last minute request, and it's totally out there in terms of ballpark. And they wanted the results within 2 weeks. And over here, they wanted it to start at the start of school term. And the only way in the UK to get that kind of number of return that's statistically relevant is to ask schools to play the game and to incentivize to schools to play the game. And I don't know again if you've had a similar experience over in Australia, and I just sat there and I was like, how much do I really need this piece of work? And where are my values screaming in my head about what if I took this to my team of young consultants, my team of Megan and her team, what they would tell me. And I know exactly what they would tell me. They would tell me to F off, quite literally, in that 50 questions for young people in one sitting in
Mm.
2 weeks with wording that you need a PhD for to understand. And it was at that point I was like, okay, nobody is saying anything about this. There is so much latitude of adult power taking over young people's spaces because they think it's being done to them and that's okay. And if the likes of Megan just sign off on the project without really having the space and the time and the agency to understand it, that's going to continue. So my my youth panels suck. Came around from sheer frustration, anger, and a nobody else is saying anything, so I probably need to say it in a way that might land, hence the polarizing title. But we've seen so much research come through over in the UK, global research, which is telling us that young people think in seconds, not year-long planning cycles. They
Mm.
want to be in the room and feel part of the room, involved, treasured, cherished, as though they are equity partners, not equality, but equity partners in the decision-making process. And they'll walk otherwise. And if you were to have a look at some of your disengagement data, and this is my call to the room, and you were really asking yourselves those honest questions of why young people are walking or not returning, or even just having a look and not signing up, just query the conversation around what's in it for them.
Mm.
And that one client who sparked off this whole series of articles that seem to have just kind of come out of my mouth like verbal vomit now, was the instigator to know the system needs to change because young people have changed. And if us adults aren't listening, we're already out of touch. And we're designing systems that they might just take part in if they're lucky. And There's something we use over here for our training, which is your Australian lamb advert, the generational divide. I don't know if you've seen that. There are smart, we love it over here, absolutely love it. And it lands the message so well about the beauty of intergenerational practice and understanding what young people need to have an equity seat at that decision making and policy shaping table. And Katie, I don't know if that answers your question, but the article came from Rage. and, and then learning.
I feel like some of the best work does it doesn't. I think the Australian version of that is we have this we had a campaign to stop smoking or to try to stop smoking young people from taking up smoking, and it was particularly aimed at our First Nations young people. And they said smoking is deadly, as in like, oh no, it might kill you. But deadly, if you talk to any young person, particularly those from Aboriginal communities and Torres Strait Islander communities, I'll tell you, deadly means cool. And so the government paid for a very large campaign that was like, smoking is cool. And it was like, if you just had asked a single young person, just one single young person, you would have saved millions and millions of dollars and some embarrassment. But that's probably one of the examples that I hear quite a lot in Australia is that version of, when you just miss the mark because you weren't listening to it and you spend all that money just off that. Megan, I'd love to ask you with that panel or probably more panels than that. You've probably had more than one experience with all of your work is what does it feel like? Because you talked about a good one. What does it feel like when it's bad? Like what is a bad engagement with a young person look like and feel like for you?
I think you can immediately sense when a panel is bad because it starts like everything is centered around the adults,
Mm.
and the young person being there is just being there for the sake, being there for the pictures, for the publicity, or like with a young person, like I don't know, like a tomato organization with young person panel, so it's there to get a few more tickets sold or something like, ooh, I want to see this young person talk. But I think a bad panel is when the adults decide everything, like the agenda, the timing, the power, and the tone of the conversation. Um, and especially like before having a briefing, those are the signs of good panels. But then for a bad panel, the young person won't necessarily be involved in the briefing, they will just be there. And then like conversations, there won't be anything centered towards the young person. It will be like, oh, so as a young person, what do you think? And then that's them done. They won't be invited to answer any questions that, an adult has answered. It will literally just be like, hello, give your view. Um, like, don't shape any outcomes for us, kind of thing. Yeah.
So is it just like parading you in front of it, like just say something so that it's just obvious that you were here in the room, but not actually listening to your opinion?
Yeah, definitely. It's like very tokenistic, very tick box, like shiny young person, but we're not really gonna take anything in. Yeah.
Can I try something with you, Megan? Is that all right?
Mm.
Very quickly, count how many rooms you've been in where you've
Mhm.
presented as a young person that you were the only group that got a round of applause. None of the groups who presented.
Okay.
You got some figures in your head?
Yeah. I think like 15.
15 in the last year, maybe?
I don't know. That's a lot.
It's super early. I'm so proud that you're here. But there's something there for me around like young people call BS out because they have this BS radar, right? Like that inauthentic, like I know when it's fake and I know when you need something from me, but you're not going to give me anything in return. It's just a
Mm.
transactional relationship rather than a reciprocal relationship. And listening should be reciprocal. Those spaces and that power creation. And Katie, I know quite a few people refer to it as power sharing. I still do, but there's something about the magic of co-creating power together rather than thinking that power is this finite ball that you can grab a bit and give it to young people and grab a bit and give it to your trustees or your non-exec directors. But my measure is, are young people going to get a round of applause when they come and present in this room and get a patronizing clap at the end, comparative to any other group in that room who is presenting?
So the clap is itself going, this is a sign of tokenism for you.
For me, it's one of those metrics that I go, if we don't get a clap, great. If we get loads of questions, yes, that's it. Because then you know they're interested and they're curious. We've had questions like, why didn't more young men respond to this consultation? And this consultation was about young women. Um, we've had a question, Megan. Yeah, that was a one of your presentations around sexual exploitation. We did some research. I know, right? I remember those ones. Um,
Is
we
it
had
trauma? Don't bring back trauma. Let's not.
oh, I think it giggles now. We had one about saying, how can we recruit more young people to a science-based outreach program? So wanting to get more young women, especially into science and tech. And I said, have representative people on your recruitment flyers that they can see themselves in, and people that they want to go and be a part of. And we got told off for that one because they only had like stock images and people in the office that they could take photos of. Um, it's just like there are in the art of the possible, youth participation is where it's at. That's the magic. Listening to Megan help you youth check, youth proof, and future proof systems. It's just a no-brainer. You're going to save yourselves a bunch of money. You're going to get it right first time. And you know that it's not a fixed process. You've got to keep checking back like you would with any project, any policy, any program of work and activity. That's the beauty of Megan and her team.
I hadn't ever thought of a data set of showing tokenism being a clap. That's really confronting, actually. Like from
Sorry.
my own practice of like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. I mean, even you, like, even, the time you show up and like, there is sometimes, oh my gosh, I have totally done that. I feel like I did it today. Just, Megan, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
like little claps. Um, but it is, I think that's the part of it for me that I really loved about the Churchill, and I love working with young people is the bullshit monitor. And even when you're trying your best, is you might not get it right, and that's okay. Like it's just to go, oh, I really wanted you to feel special and appreciated, and instead what I did was made you feel like you was the special one and that everybody else was just here to do a job and you weren't here to do a job. And yeah, that's confronting. I love that. That is, sorry, I just wanted to stop on that because I just felt I had that moment of like, oh no, it's brutal
I'm
honesty.
sorry.
I love it. Classic calling me out. I feel
We
that.
no, well, and also we love Lundy's model of child participation. It's really landed here in the UK as a way to better understand the key ingredients for youth voice and youth participation, youth engagement, co-production, whatever words and language you want to throw around it. And Professor Lundy, a very good friend of mine, Laura, she's fantastic. If you haven't met her or heard her speak, make a plan because her words and how she shares her message based on the legal argument of children's rights isn't just about their rights, it's about the non-negotiables in our practice. And Katie's just sharing something that we've pulled together of how to create those listening spaces with young people. Thank you, Katie. As if we planned this, by the way. Um, and these four pillars have really helped shape my own learning and professional development as a chief exec to make sure that some of the spaces that I'm bringing or inviting Megan to, and Megan in return invites me to, by the way, um, are safe, they are inclusive, they are accessible, and they're not just accessible, safe, and inclusive for me. It's not just about my adult comfort blanket here. It's about what do I need to do to get out of my own way to help Megan feel safe, nurtured, loved, scaffolded support so that she can have whatever she needs to choose to participate. And I'm very careful with my language here around choice. Megan can choose to take part. She can choose not to take part, as is her child's right. She can also choose to take part in little bits and still exit, and that's okay. We've seen quite a lot of long-term youth advisory panels, another reason why I wrote the article, where young people are reprimanded or there is a um there is an element of making them feel like they're not participating in a way that makes them feel shame, guilt, upset if they can't make a group. But actually, it's their legal right to choose to participate. On the converse, and I was looking at your ingredients, Katie, as adults and corporate parents, so we have a corporate parenting agenda over here for our children who are care experienced. It is our legal duty to listen. So if the space isn't right,
Mm.
forget it. Absolutely forget it because Megan won't pitch. She won't be able to have her voice heard. And you know what? As an adult, I won't be prepared to listen. So that's getting space right is the foundation, and you're absolutely right, it's where to start. The voice element of Lindy's model is around helping Megan form and express her voice. And Megan, I'm going to throw you under the bus slightly. When I first met Megan, she looked down at the ground. She wouldn't say boo to a goose. She was afraid of her own voice or even just putting her hand up or like writing a post-it note. We love our big post-it notes over here, our big stickies. And now she co-hosts. She could do it without me. She doesn't need me anymore. In fact, I need her more than she needs me, which I think she's more than aware of these days. Um, but it's about helping her express her voice in a way that works for her. So for us at Participation People, we co-design projects based on Megan's skills, her talents, her strengths, rather than what the project needs. And sometimes that can flip the power paradigm and flip the switch of how to get Megan and her team of young people in the room in a way that works for them first. It's a really useful way to look at how to design a program. And then the second two pillars, and Laura, Professor Lundy talks about the four pillars in sort of pairs. So audience and influence is the next bit. And being really straight with the Spotlight series today, before COVID, Participation People did more work in space and voice with young people, scaffolding support, creating that equity partnership. Post-COVID, majority of our work is based on audience and influence because we
Wow.
found in the UK that adults have forgotten how to listen. And I don't know if that's the same in Australia, but there's something that's like clicked around adults just removing themselves from listening to they listen to act or react. But actually, participation is about adults listening to understand first and foremost.
Mm.
And there's something really magical about creating those spaces for adults and warming them up to what young people could say or what they might not be able to say. What are the non-negotiables for their involvement? What could the project do if you gave power to them and created power with them that you'd never even seen before? And it's that blind spot of decision making is where young people and that intergenerational practice can really add value and also lift young people in terms of social mobility and different ways of thinking that they never even thought possible. Megan, do you want to come on in here before I keep speaking and keep verbal vomiting?
Yeah, I think so. I think just to go back to like panels and youth advisory boards, I think that they usually do tick the space and the voice in like a materialistic, yeah, we have a nice office for you to visit. We're gonna let you speak. But I think that they definitely fall apart at audience and influence. And those are obviously the most important for me. Um, but I think that's where meaningful participation actually lives in the audience and the influence. And as a young person, if I can't see like the impact of my input, then it just feels like I'm performing. And yeah, like real influence means that young people like me track the journey of their idea into action, and
Mm.
panels don't usually allow that. Um, yeah.
One of the things struggle with, Megan, so I did it. Megan, Australians, our accents, the worst. Um, One of the things that I've really struggled with is to be truly transparent with a young person when the system is really complicated or broken or boring. And
Mm.
so, government systems, for example, are very slow moving. They have really like very large bureaucracies that need to do things before something changes. And so, that time shift between what you said and what has been action can be very long. Sometimes it can be a generation. It could be 20, 25 years before something that young people told us gets put into sort of the law of a country. But it actually made a huge difference because it took so long and it got there. Um, have you had examples where you've been part of a slow moving system and then there was that influence part that was done well? Because there's one thing that happens is that sometimes what happens, we'll keep young people out of the process because we know that it's going to be long and boring and you can't see it. So people are like, well, I can't show that there's any action, so I just won't include young people, which I think is problematic in itself. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you've seen any versions of that where you've worked in a system that's really slow, where that influence was something where they were honest with you, but it still made you feel valued.
Um, Quite a few. So I was part for like 7, 8 years, I'm gonna say, of my local youth council.
Right.
Youth council is very slow. They're very like strict on what they can do. So, it takes ages to get anything done, anything approved. So when I first joined, I remember being like, oh, we should have like a food bank, like a soup kitchen or something. 2 years into that, the idea was put on our like drawing board and everything. Um, and it was hung up basically. We had like a young researchers kind of thing in my area. So they went out, they surveyed all of the young people from all of the schools in my area. And they were like, what do you want to see? And they were like, oh, in the holidays, we want something fun to do, da 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 da. So we're now in my sixth year of being at youth council. And so me saying, oh, we should do a soup kitchen has finally like gone into happening. And we did like a community, like supermarket, come and eat, have fun kind of thing. But it did take 6 years. And what I found through the whole thing is that, yeah, I said it like years ago when I was very shy and I was trying to think of something on the spot so I could say something. But it then built into me saying that and then into actually primary school children, I think, in London, where I'm from, getting free school meals. And then it built into my local area. Like we had an initiative where it was like, oh, eat healthy kind of thing. And then that built into my youth council actually doing something. And I think the thing that made me stick it out was, my worker, even though I had like 50 billion different workers at youth council, because they all decided to leave, whatever, different story for a different day. They were all like, yeah, this is really good. We're talking about it, da, 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 da. And even though it did take ages, it was maybe like every quarterly, every 4 months coming back to me and being like, we like your idea. We're talking about it. We could do it, councils move slow. And I think that full honesty of being like, councils are slow, councils are rubbish. Sorry, council workers, if you're here, like, I'm very honest. It's very early. Um, like, they were very honest with me and they were like, this sucks, but we like your idea. We're gonna get it done. We don't know when. And I think that was what did it for me, just full transparency.
So that influence is like even when it's not action, immediate action, just the transparency still as far as feeling valued and like your opinion and your input has been you're part of the solution. That transparency does that for you in the same way of like, oh my goodness, here's a soup kitchen.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I think especially from little me wanting to be a politician, having that inside information of being like, wow, councils move really slow. It's very hard to get anything done. That helped, because then it's like I feel like, ooh, I know inside information kind of thing.
That
Antonia,
exclusive
okay.
access is really important. Sorry, Katie.
No, I was just going to say, is that in line with what you find in other places, or do you have other
Oh my
examples?
gosh, totally. But and I also think it's still useful for young people to understand that adult systems work at the pace of a reversing turtle or tortoise. And that's okay too. However, that is not an excuse to not continually offer them feedback of what has moved, what hasn't moved, and reasons why. We would love to share our feedback loop tool with you all, which is a continuous learning cycle that you can implement across every project for services. It helps my team understand the difference that they're making as professionals as well. So we build that into professional performance reviews. Um, but even those long-winded, bureaucratic projects still move, and young people should absolutely still be involved in hearing about how their voice has influenced that move. And the bit I really also wanted to say is those year-long youth advisory panels, you tend to just have the same group of young people pitch. If they're not paid, even worse. The young people that you will get in the room will be your altruistic young people in terms of motivation. They will often be high academic attaining or have a massive beef to grind, like a massive, like fueled by rage and anger that they need to do something about it. And they will also be of a certain demographic type. So consider that those year-long youth advisory panels are discriminatory by design for young people. They want to work in a place which is fast, gives them that continuous learning and development. So there's always something very clear in what's in it for them.
Mm.
Um, and even those long-winded government budgets and projects, there are still project phases that young people want to come in on. Megan, for example, loves creating stuff from scratch. She loves problem solving. She loves calling it out. So you know what? The project mobilization phase for Megan, amazing. Bring in the Megans. The project delivery phase for the ones that like that slow plod and just like check systems change.
Does
We have a
anybody
bunch
like
of
that?
young people like that. Yeah, I love that too. I mean, a little bit less. I like the creation stuff. And then, but the evaluation and reflection and that quality assurance and governance, we have young people that love a clipboard and love telling adults what's going right and what's going wrong. So there's something about bringing young people aligned to their skills, strengths, and talents and allowing them to build agency in projects that are designed for adults to lead and run, but in a way that works for young people. There is no excuse to exclude young people from the table because it's going to take a 5 year project. We've just been invited to take part in a 10-year longitudinal adolescent study over here, which blows my mind. Like, how am I going to keep young people interested in a project for 10 years? I can't keep my stepchildren interested in what's for tea for 5 minutes. So there's something really magic about, and I'm using the word magic about a lot today, and I realize it's very early for us, but youth participation and voice is magic. If you listen well, you set up those spaces, you help them form and express their opinion, the diverse perspectives that they bring to the table to sense check your practice makes the world light up because you've usually not heard it or not seen it or not even known it's existed before. So, in terms of those top tips, Katie, because I know we're coming to like 9 minutes out to close, think about what young people need first. Hackathons, for example, responding to your question, Danny, around those online meeting spaces for young people. Three
Mm.
workshops, ideation, brains taking those ideas further, rapid prototypes, pitching decision makers at the end. Amazing. Do more hackathons. Thinking about listening labs, like what do adults need to hear from young people, but what's in it for young people first? What's the reciprocal agreement that young people are going to get out of those listening labs? How are you going to feed back to them? When? Who? How? What's in it for young people? How do they know they shape change? Reverse mentoring is becoming quite a big hitter over here. So asking Megan to mentor me, chief exec, flipping that power paradigm. So I hear direct from Megan, not just a data dashboard. That's one of our favorite projects. We're running that with our Department for Education at the moment, which is quite exciting. I can't tell you too much. And then, of course, having a team of champions, the Megans. I'm gonna might rename the young consultants the Megans. Actually, no, that might pee everybody else off, Megan. I know, I know. I thought you might like that. But we pay young people over here £22 an hour because for me, they are experts by lived experience. And that's what I would normally pay an expert, subject area expert, unless they're a professor and they kind of demand a certain amount of money, stroke the university takes a whole bunch of cash from their pay. So it's about thinking about that reciprocal agreement, those meaningful and authentic spaces in that feedback loop. That if I was to add to your ingredients list, Katie, that's where I'd pitch in a few more recipes to your cookbook.
I think the listening one is like it's a pretty pivotal ingredient that I don't know that we take seriously enough. Is like, is the space really, does it have the ability to listen to what young people are going to say? And if the answer is no, I mean, maybe we should ask whether we should be doing it.
Right, exactly. And if you're not prepared to shift, shape, polish, even stop what you're doing, then just consider that actually that's an adult design system and make your peace with that or consider whether that's the right place to start.
I feel like that's definitely because your work, obviously, you can come in and you, as a consultant, bespoke, you design things, but you have some values that are very core to participation people that I think is a bit unique than maybe some of us on the call could. We might not have the same about ability to kind of shape things the way that you do. But I love that you really kind of wherever you possibly can, you just stand by those, like the Lundy model, for example, that you've kind of pointed out. But are there other things that are really core to why, when, and how participation people will get involved in something?
Play. And I'm, I'm pausing for effect. Um, because playful practice is our key ingredient, our secret sauce.
And
Um,
why is that important? Why is play important?
well, consider when you were little, or when if you can take you if everybody listening can take themselves back to when they were maybe 12 or 8 years old and thinking about what their life looked like and felt like to them, everything was about play. Everything was about joy. And if they didn't have play, or they didn't have joy and structures that they understood and could align to, then their world was in chaos. And we've seen a lot of young people go through a significant trauma over here, and a number of our projects work with underserved, marginalized groups of young people. Um, Play is the ingredient that gets everybody to the table, even time poor chief executives or government officials. We work with a number of civil servants over here who are a little bit, should we say, they have a lot of trepidation about how we do our work, and especially when they meet with me and they realize I'm the human version of Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. Um, they go, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly." And then you get them around a table with fidget toys and Play-Doh and interactive facilitation. So not just a meeting with another agenda. They're like, "Oh, I've had the best day ever, and I've got stuff done, and I've probably got more stuff done today than I have in the last 2 weeks at work. Oh, cool. Tell me about that. Mm. Did you have fun? Yes. Did you learn a lot? Yes. Did you make a change today? Yes. Did you understand young people's perspectives? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do more of that." So there's the proof of concept through play as well. And I think if we all just took a moment, you understand that you are more relaxed when you're having fun. Your creative brain comes alive. You're not on the back foot, you're not under attack, there's no judgment, there's no bias. You're just having fun. And that facilitation is really key to our practice, whether it's a research project, a peer education project, a delivering training to a bunch of professionals who've forgotten how to play project, or even calling out racism in terms of project design to a bunch of CEOs in a tech company, which we've had to do recently. You can still have those tough conversations facilitated by play. And it takes the personalization out of it, especially around power.
Um, we do have until 7:30 our time, but I know that you two
Great.
is starting your moment. But I might just ask you one question and then we might open up for questions. So if the people on the chat want to think about questions and if you're up for it, turning your camera on and asking yourself, or else if you want to put it in the chat, I'll ask these two wonderful humans what their thoughts are. So my question for you, I suppose, is we don't all get to do, we don't all get to choose exactly the way it works. But sometimes we do have the power to change one thing. So if you could stop one thing that people are doing in standard youth participation, what would that one thing be that you would stop? And then I'm going to say, ask you what you would start in its place. So, Megan, do you want, you can throw to Antonia if you want, or you can start.
I'm gonna
Megan!
throw. I'm
No, I
throwing.
volunteer you as tribute.
That is a horrible, horribly great question. Yeah. I think one thing that I would stop is like anything, like it could be as imaginative as possible. Um, in that case, I would change and get rid of tokenism. Um, and I would just not allow you to invite young people if they are going to be a token, a tick box, a shiny object on a table. Because it really annoys me. Yeah, and I think if you're inviting a young person, they want to feel valued and they don't want it could be their first experience of like youth advisory or just youth participation. And they're feeling like, why am I here? Like I've literally done nothing except have fancy biscuits and lots of cups of tea. Um, and I just don't like it because then it just stops them from participating again, and then it's a whole cycle. Um, yeah, and then one thing that I would start is I think if you are going to do a youth advisory board, then I think it should be like renamed into like AAA board or something. So then you do like advisory, which is asking young people, you do advocacy, which is acting with young people, and then agency, which is young people sharing like the power, like having a say in budgets, decisions, and also having like as much as possible the final say. Because I know that it isn't always possible, and we have like big bosses who like to dictate everything. But yeah, I would definitely say
Triple
AAA
A.
board and panel.
I love that. All right, over to you, passionate person. You have to stop one thing and only start one
Katie,
thing.
you're going to have to answer the same question, though. I'm pulling you into the conversation too.
Sure.
I, I have a really big bee in my bonnet, which is, I know it's a very English phrase, um, but around not involving young people at program design or problem framing stage. And what I found, so of course the converses involve young people in problem framing and program design. Reason being, we see a lot of young people being brought into sense check or sign off projects, programs, assets, artifacts, after the decisions have been made. But actually, what you've done by excluding them from the program design, project design, problem framing stage is you've built adult bias into your program already. So if they're not at the table in that room or and they haven't had the space and the voice to talk about what that problem looks and feels like to them, the adult hasn't understood the end goal properly, the end game. And then, of course, in terms of my colloquialisms and popular culture phrases that I've been throwing in the conversation today, the Avengers can't then assemble at the end. young people are just like pitching in as sort of token superheroes at some point where they get a round of applause, which I agree with you, Danny, that it shows appreciation. But for me, it's around how do we create young people from start to finish in a way that helps and works with them and removes that adult bias in that design phase of a project. And that's why like I love Megan so much in so many ways because she just calls it out. And that's why young people are so freaking brilliant because they just call it out and they also call it in. Whereas sometimes adults, I find we get a little blinkered in our older years where we forget what that world blinker does to us and some of the polarization in our news and media as well, definitely, that comes across my timeline affects my thinking and my creativity too. So yeah, involve young people in co-design, please, please, please.
I will just say, if anybody wants to ask a question, just put up your hand and I will call on you or write it in the chat. My answer to this is stop with the bullshit. Let me say that a nicer way. Uh, yeah, stop with like if you cannot meaningfully involve young people, then don't. Like I think it's really hard when there's fake participation to because young people don't have the ability to advocate for their opinions and voice if there's been something that's been tick the box. So I think it's really useful to just really be honest what you can and can't do. Um, and I think what I really desperately, what I learned from the Churchill is transparency is key. Like just being really honest, like what you start with, where you start, it's so important. So for me, it was like if you say you're making a cake, don't make muffins. It's a lie. Like, or don't make pancakes. Like, so being really honest, this is about your rights. Or it's about democracy, or it's about skill development, or it's about like treating you like an expert or that starting point for me and just really holding yourself accountable to that as the adult or the practitioner person who's paid to be in the room and produce something is just being really honest about what you said you were going to deliver and be honest with young people when you shift it or it's not possible. So that data stuff is really important. um, do we have any questions? I feel like there's so many. Oh, here we go. Yes, Katie. I love it.
Hiya.
Hi.
That was great. Thank you. Super, super interesting. I'm really interested in the kind of the training aspect, in terms of like what you offer alongside the projects that you work and kind of how you kind of keep that, yeah, like personal development and skill development, elements alongside the project work. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you mean skill development for the young people or
Yeah.
for everybody involved? Because I'd love to hear, like,
Um,
what does that look like?
Yeah, maybe both. I was thinking young people particularly, but I think also, um, yeah, also interested in kind of how you develop the skills of adults because I think we've all been in a lot of spaces where their skills aren't particularly great in doing this kind of thing as well. So, yeah,
I'm
thanks.
passing the floor to Megan, who's been through it. Because I can, oh well, I can tell you the like the list of modules and support mechanisms, and I can top you up. But you've been through it, Megan. Lots of different projects and lots of different induction boot camps, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so particularly as a Team Megan consultant, renaming them now, I've decided. When I first started, we did a whole like 2 days workshop thing. We worked on like Lundy, we worked on elevator pitches for ourselves and just how to hold space in a room. And I think like every young person should do that at least once. Like you do that, you feel amazing after, and you're like, yeah, I want to do more. You get like the flavor of it. It's like when you eat, like when you get a burger and you smell it, you're like, yeah, I'm hungry, hungry for more. Um, and I think we've got a training coming up soon as well, actually. But I would say for me, where I learn the most is actually working like on the job. So doing things like this, like, and hearing other opinions from other like youth worker sector people, yes, um, is where I get most of my knowledge from, and like I just grow on the job, and then through the lived experience as well, like everyone knows what it is like to be a young person, but I think to be a Gen Z in this generation in the digital age. Like only a few of us, like however many Gen Zs there are, I don't know, a billion, whatever, have that. Um, and like it's very rare. And to have the space in a room full of adults to be like, yeah, so when I was born, the iPhone came out, and I've just never lived a life without technology. Not everyone is going to be able to relate to that. I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the other side of that is like, what do you need from the adults who are supporting this project for you to be able to kind of really meaningfully and comfortably and like powerfully input into these spaces?
I think definitely. So I'll do like a project and then I'll do a keynote. So I think for like a keynote or presentation, I think having a briefing before with everyone who's going to be on the panel, having like an agenda, full transparency, knowing like topics that are going to be going over, any slides, whatever, so I can familiarize myself with them. Um, and I think from the adults on the panel, just having that like relationship, being able to input. So like in the briefing, being like, hello, I'm this, this, and this. And I think also them having like researched you. So like I'm on LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn, quick plug. But them researching my LinkedIn and being like, oh, so you worked on this, or even just like having basic knowledge of who I am, is really nice. And then I think for a project, having full transparency, having a timeline as well, even if there are not solid dates, but like, oh, in 6 to whatever months, we're gonna be finished. Being paid. Yeah, I'm at the stage of my life where I don't do anything for free unless I really care. So pay me in food,
Oh,
in money, whatever. Yeah,
I was just realizing all the stuff that you do for me for free. So I feel like you do really care. Thanks, Megan. I feel the
yeah,
love.
you're welcome.
Katie, does that help and answer your question?
It does.
I've also thrown a couple of resources into the chat as well around Participation People's Promise to young people, which actually needs a refresh. And I promised to Team Megan or our young consultants. Danny, that might be helpful for your young advisor team actually also, because we think it's not the training and support isn't just a training program. It can be that for some young people, but actually, and I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but young people today, massive social anxiety, more than I've ever seen in my professional
Mhm.
practice. So there's that scaffold of support to help get them to a group setting, if and when that's appropriate for them, that we would also consider training or support, however you want to phrase it. And what I've also going to throw into chat, this is our and we've co-produced this. It's also up for a refresh for 2026. But this is our youth agency directory of modules, if you like. Pretty boring titles, not gonna lie, but they help show you what we would create with young people, like that training package. Sometimes it's bolt-on training, sometimes it's that induction boot camp, which Megan beautifully referenced. Sometimes it's mentoring or support from an adult one-on-one, and we do that a lot with our SEND, our disability and neurodivergent groups here, especially, is we give them that one-to-one space either before or during or after a session, so they can still choose to participate in ways that work for them. But also very happy to chat. And I think Sarah has thrown a question in the chat as well, Katie, but
I
other
saw it.
Katie Potter, have we answered your question?
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to follow up with you both as well, actually, in future. Thanks.
Yay!
So Sarah, do you want to ask it or I can ask it? You put it in, so I'll respect the fact that I said I would read it out. So student representative councils and advisory groups in high schools, can we make them more meaningful, and less tokenistic?
Please, yes, please.
Just yes. The answer is yes, Sarah, you can and you should, and that's great. Next question. No.
Can
I
I
think
can I tell you the best story in my last 2 weeks? And Sarah, bear with me. And if I've put the emphasis on the wrong syllable for your name, I apologize. But participation people, we offer volunteering leave. And I don't know if that's normal for Australia either, but
some of them.
and as part of my volunteering leave, I support some of our local student councils to up their game, shall we say. And one of these, so I guess a junior school, but primary school here for us. Their catering contractor was coming up for the either a renew or a chop on the block, using your catering metaphors again, Katie. Um, and this young lady, she's 5. She stands up, she puts her hand on her hip, and she goes to the head of business development at a catering company whose name must not be mentioned, and they provide meals for thousands of children across the southwest of the UK, which is where I live. She stands up and she goes, "If you think your food is any good, you come and eat with us for a week. I will sit with you. I will talk to you. I will show you where your cutlery goes, and you can come and eat with me for a week. And if it's still good enough by then, I will renew your contract." She's 5 years old, folks. 5. How do you say no to that? Of course, they couldn't. So they've come in this week and have eaten with the students. Um, and this young lady, 5-year-old young lady, with all the sass of my 14-year-old stepdaughter, has been doing a food blog, which I've been following with interest, and selfies and photos and a little bit of narrative. And now the teachers are getting involved because they would also bring in their own food because they wouldn't eat the school food. And I'm pretty getting the feeling that power has absolutely shifted from the catering contractor saying what they can't do to the student council telling them what they can do and reasons why. And that little story, that little like bit of joy for me experiencing that this and last week was one of the reasons why I do what I do. And it's again about giving them the space, helping them form and express their opinion, hand on the hip and all the sass, but also getting the catering contractor to that meeting and warmed up for what they might hear is where you get the best outputs and that behavior change. I don't personally think student councils work over here in the UK, but for some students, they're a introduction to what consultation looks and feels like. Um, we've moved away from it because schools here are underfunded, have zero time, and often that role of student voice or student council leader is like chucked into somebody else's job. So they maybe have like half a day a term to dedicate to it. And of course, it's not going to be meaningful. And of course, it's not going to be authentic. And of course, it's going to be the head teacher just broadcasting what they think students should be doing. And often it will just be if you ask students what the problems are in the school, they'll say the lunch queue, the toilets suck, and there's bullying. And that'll be the same every year and nothing gets done. So there is an absolute call to action, but right now our schools over here are so underfunded and running around like headless chickens that I cannot see a way without significant funding and resourcing to reverse that. So Sarah, I'm with you. I'm trying to recreate or at least clone some young 5-year-olds with sass, and I'll send them your way if they come over my horizon again. But that for me just brought me joy this week. I wanted to share.
I think that the data set, so I'm a bit of a data nerd, hence numbers and people synergy, but I there's something about you said at the very beginning about like when people disengage. Imagine if we measured how many young people disengage from those processes. I think it would make us like check what we were doing. So my response to that is let's measure something like what is exactly is being done, and that in itself will sometimes create space for those conversations like why aren't people eating the food? Maybe we should ask some of the students, and then that happened. So sometimes you need some version of a checklist, like a point that says where there's a drop where the people who make decisions normally are used to pieces of paper. If you can use a data set that will allow questions, it sometimes will open up for innovation. And that's where young people are the perfect person to come in. And if you start it from the very like the start or the scratch moment of like, let's co-design, let's co-create, let's imagine, let's innovate, that's where the magic happens. But it's really hard when something's set and forget, like an advisory council. But maybe if we put data sets in that forced innovation, and something just as easy as like, why are people disengaged or why are the numbers going down? And then that forces a conversation with the actual students. That can be a very empowering moment I've seen, and definitely seen versions of that on global scales where big changes have happened because somebody actually stopped and asked a question because a data set made them think about it. So yeah, I would always start with it. Just start measuring things. You'll be surprised how quickly people want to make it better.
I
Megan,
love
oh,
that. And data for us or data for you, absolutely. We've just in the process of co-designing a Lindy model scorecard for services.
ooh, cool.
So every team meeting, imagine thinking about rag rating your voice, your space, your audience, your influence on different projects, and then using that data to feed up to the senior leaders in your organization so they can see what's happening in real time, and then feeding back to young people on a continuous basis. Also really cool. We are at the early stages of that. Would happily share that with AYAC. Yes, I think I got that right. To share with you all as well, because what we think when you measure what is working, what's not, and where the gaps, it helps you understand where young people are at in real time. And not, again, not in a 12-month planning cycle, but on a quarterly, if not monthly basis. So you can react in real time because young people are reacting in real time. And what's worse, once they're disengaged, you have to work 5 times as hard to bring them back. And they will block you, they will delete you, they will tell their friends not to go near you. So brand reputation and risk is actually an issue that I think the data sets will help showcase and hold a mirror up to you.
Now, before we miss the opportunity to get feedback, because again, data is important, but also I think the people who are listening, it's really important to think about these questions that participation people always ask at the end of their session. And I was like, we have to ask this. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment, as wonderful humans who've been part of this, is what are 3 words, how have like that would describe how the session has left you feeling? And then what is one learning or hot take that you've taken away from today's session? And
Please,
I
please,
think,
please.
yeah, please, in the feel free to, yeah, you could go off camera if you want to, but also you can just put it in the chat because I love to see it. I think for me, yeah, Megan, as always, every time I speak with young people, which is why I think it is just the best job in the world when you get to work with young people and being old enough, and you'll see it when you age out, or what we say in Australia is like you level up, like in a video game, you level up when you get to 25. Um, but you get to see the next generation of people asking really hard questions and calling out your bullshit. And it's like, yes, it's just an endless, let's challenge ourselves to be better always. And young people, there's something magical about young people and that stage of life where you think about things differently and innovatively. You bring solutions in a way that is different to other generations. And the learning, as you said, like only Gen Zs know what it's like to be a Gen Z. That's just fact. Like you are the experts of your life. So asking you what needs to happen, how can it be addressed? You're obviously the expert of that space. And hopefully you'll stay engaged with young people throughout your life and you'll realize and you'll hear them talk about it to you as well. Because it is quite a cool like moment of time when you go, wow, I'm the one who doesn't know what's going on. This is rough.
And they're not a homogenous group. That's the other bit, right? Like young people are not a homogenous group. They are skilled, talented, interested, passionate on things that change daily. So how do we adapt and make sure our practice listens to understands that as well? There's some really interesting chat coming in the chat. Gosh, that was a double take. Apologies. Massive thank you to you all. We've got energized buzzing and ideas. Katie. We've
Someone's
got
gonna join
inspired, ready
TikTok.
to act, uncomfortable. Yes, Haley, love that. Exciting, important. What else we got, Megan? Happy,
Someone,
invigorated, ready to jump.
someone's gonna join TikTok.
You all did not put that in our success indicators for today.
I mean, I'm loving that. That's definitely something I've been doing lately is how can I share the skills that I have in the place where young people are, which is TikTok. And it's like, it's challenging to think about like, oh, how do I make advocacy sound cool in like a minute if I can? So welcome, please, more people. Absolutely. I love all of these hot takes. Inspired, curious, patient span. It's a good one. Well, we've come to the end of the session, and look, Ayak, thank you so much for hosting us. I am loving these spotlight sessions. I found it so incredible to be able to travel around like the world and listen to people. And then when I got back home and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so desperate for all my friends in the sector to hear from people as well. So it's just been an incredible opportunity. Our next one is on the 9th of December, I think, which is about youth-led mental health research with Dr. Brady and the McPinn Foundation. I don't know if you know them. They're also English, wonderful English people. You can have a lot of cool people doing cool stuff with and for young people. Um, Megan, since you're here, is there one thing, one word that you would like to summarize how you're feeling about telling adults how to do this better?
You put me on the spot. Um, I
Hoping you'd say it
feel
by now.
one word I feel is ready.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a mic drop. I love it. I love it. I feel really inspired by both of you. Thank you so much for the way that you do your work and how much you share it. I'm going to pass it back to Nellie and just say thank you, everybody, for attending. And Nellie, over to you.
Thanks, Katie. On behalf of AAC, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Katie, Antonia, and Megan for the fantastic conversations that have been had tonight and for sharing your insights and expertise. It was a super engaging session, so big thank you. I'm just going to put a few links in the chat. So there's a link for participation people there, KDA's Churchill Fellowship, and a few AAC things as well. So keep an eye out on our YouTube channel for this recording, and hopefully we'll see you in the coming weeks for the next Spotlight series with KDA. And I'll let you all go and get some dinner now, or breakfast.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.